Good evening. Is this on? Yes. Good evening. The 27th meeting of the 72nd term of the Baltimore City Council is now called to order. If you have your cell phones, please turn them off or put them on vibrate. Tonight's invocation will be led by Minister Carlos Muhammad of Muhammad Mosque number 6. If everyone would please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Let us bow our heads. In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful, all praise belongs to God, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the most merciful, Master of this day of judgment in which we now do live. Thee alone do we serve, and thee alone do we beseech for thine aid. O dear God, guide us on the straight path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy favors, and not upon whom thy wrath has been brought down, nor those who have gone astray after they heard thy message. Amen.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay. The clerk will call the roll of the members.
President Young, Cohen, Scott, Dorsey, Henry, Slifer, Middleton, Pinkett, Burnett, Bullock, Reisinger, Costello, Stokes, Snead, Clark. Mr. President, we have a quorum. Where is she? Oh.
Okay, this evening we welcome Mr. Rick Scott of the Pride of Baltimore II, who will be giving us some information.
Good evening, and thank you, President Young and members of the Baltimore City Council, for providing the opportunity for Pride of Baltimore to speak with you today. I would also like to thank Councilman Costello for the invitation. In the next 10 minutes, I would like to share a brief history of Pride, update you regarding our current financial state, and ask for your support. It is my hope that this is the beginning of an ongoing dialogue in the coming weeks and months. A brief history. The first Pride of Baltimore was launched in the Inner Harbor in 1977 under the leadership and vision of then Mayor William Donald Schaefer. She became a symbol of the revitalization of the Inner Harbor and the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship of the people of Baltimore. She was the first tall ship in the nation to represent the people of a city and a state. The vessel was owned and operated by the City of Baltimore until 1980, when a nonprofit, Pride of Baltimore, Inc., was formed to maintain, operate, and help to raise funds for the vessel. Vessel ownership remained with the City of Baltimore through 1986. During her 9 years at sea, Pride of Baltimore captured the imagination of countless visitors and extended the hand of friendship in ports around the world. In 1986, tragedy struck. A weather phenomenon called a microburst hit the vessel, and she was capsized and sank within minutes. We lost our captain and 3 crew members. Our remaining 8 crew were lost at sea for over 4 days until being rescued by a passing cargo ship. Letters of condolence from all over the world flooded the office. After the tragic sinking of the original Pride, something unprecedented happened. Money started coming into the organization in jars of pennies from school children, in envelopes with dollars to thousands of dollars. This outpouring of unsolicited public support highlighted the resiliency of the people of Baltimore and Maryland. Together, officials from the City of Baltimore and the State of Maryland worked with the volunteer nonprofit board to make the decision to go forward with building a new ship. The ship was named Pride of Baltimore II. It is important to highlight that the nonprofit that was formed in 1980 was led by a volunteer board of directors to help manage and operate the city-owned asset, the first Pride of Baltimore. It was a joint effort among city, state, and nonprofit board that led to the building of Pride of Baltimore II. And though the state owned the vessel from 1988 to 2010, leadership from city, state, and the nonprofit continued to work together to send forth this unique and great ambassador for all the citizens of Baltimore and Maryland. Today, though Pride 2 is now owned and operated by the nonprofit, its mission continues to serve the interests of the people of Baltimore and Maryland. And since her commissioning in 1988, 30 years ago this year, Pride 2 has become one of the most well-known U.S. sailing vessels in the world, spreading positive messages about Baltimore and Maryland. She has visited more than 200 ports in 40 countries in North, South, and Central America, Europe, and Asia. Pride 2 is a unique learning platform for children, educating thousands of children to engage our local communities and capture the imagination of millions of people throughout the world. She's fostered economic development and tourism for Baltimore and Maryland and attracts hundreds of millions of dollars in value from the media generated promoting Baltimore and Maryland. Pride is at a financial crossroads. If we're not able to secure sufficient funding in the coming weeks and months, we may need to lay the vessel up until sufficient funding can be secured. We are requesting renewed funding from city and state government and have made a public announcement today to urge our friends, the general public, and the business community to express support and to donate. So why is Pride facing financial difficulties? Pride has had a long history of funding difficulties given the expenses associated with maintaining a wood-tall ship and its operations and programs. The organization is not able to support itself through revenue generated from vessel use alone. From 1988 to 2008, Pride had a charter agreement with the state of Maryland, with partial funding committed each year. Due to the economic downturn in 2008, the state stopped funding the organization, forcing Pride to withdraw funds from its endowment to continue sailing the vessel through early 2016. The years 2008 to 2016 represented a critical turning point in the financial state of the organization. For the first time in the nonprofit's history of serving the interests of city and state, it was faced with continuing its mission without significant government support. We are very grateful for having received additional state support for fiscal years 16 through 18, which has allowed the organization to gain momentum in diversifying its revenue streams. We need more time and are requesting a renewed commitment from city and state. And one particular point of pride is that we have no debt as an organization, and the vessel has been well maintained over the years. So what are we doing? Owning, maintaining, and operating a very complex tall ship such as Pride 2 is a challenging undertaking. We're reaching out to past individual and corporate sponsors, researching all available grant opportunities, building a grassroots campaign to energize the public, and unleashing a strong marketing and public relations push that will bring attention to the needs of the organization as well as its benefits to the community. We're also building lists of influencers and recruiting them to create peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns in order to leverage their networks. We're sending up a flare to those communities, officials, supporters, and tall ship enthusiasts across the globe who have enjoyed visits from Pride 2 over the years. How can Pride be of benefit to Baltimore City? Pride is at its best when it's serving the interests of the people of Baltimore and Maryland. The vessel is best used in service to other organizations to help with their fundraising, business development, programming, and it's an incredible asset. In your packet is a document called How to Maximize Use of Pride 2. It outlines some of the many ways Pride can best be of service, and what's possible is only limited by our collective imagination. Our request. As I mentioned, this is a critical time for Pride of Baltimore, so please consider our following requests. Number one, a 5-year commitment from the city of $300,000 each year. We are requesting an ongoing commitment from the state as well for each of the next 5 years. These commitments will provide Pride with a strong baseline from which to begin each fiscal year, as well as the funding needed to revamp our fundraising strategies, corporate sponsorship opportunities, and operations. And this is how we become self-sustaining for future generations. Number 2, the organization needs emergency funding of $230,000 to have at least a partial sailing season this year. This money, however, needs to be raised by the end of February or very beginning of March to make the most of this opportunity. Number 3, active participation by Baltimore City government on a Pride task force composed of prominent business leaders, public officials, and other supporters. This task force would connect us with corporations, foundations, and other supporters. Number 4, longer term. We ask for assistance in identifying a permanent home for Pride 2. Currently, we rent space or ask for permission to use docks in the Inner Harbor. We need a permanent home for our Pride of Baltimore 2. President Young and Baltimore City Council members, I want to reiterate our gratefulness to each of you for giving us this opportunity today. Pride of Baltimore and Pride of Baltimore 2 have promoted positive messaging for Baltimore and Maryland for more than 40 years. The Pride legacy is a bold legacy. It required vision and imagination to build a ship and then sail it to distant ports for the benefits of a people. It's a tribute to the city and state that these majestic vessels have fostered a spirit of hope and adventure across the globe on behalf of the citizens of Baltimore and Maryland. Pride is owned by the nonprofit, but it belongs to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for that presentation, and hopefully we can talk with the administration. I don't know whether, what's going on with the budget right now, because the budget haven't been submitted to the council, but that's one of the things that we would let the administration know and see if we can be helpful. Can't promise, but thank you. It is the council custom to generalize the invocation. Ask for motion to generalize the prayer. Motion by Councilman Pinkett, second by Councilman Cohen. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and it has been adopted. Approval of the journal. We will now proceed with the adoption of the journal.
Mr. President, the journal of the proceedings from January 22nd City Council meeting is on the council members' desks.
Is there a motion to approve the journal? Motion by Councilman Scott, second by Councilman Costello. All those in favor of adopting the journal say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. The journal is adopted. Bill signed by the mayor can be found on page 2 of the agenda. Executive nomination withdrawn.
EA 18-0123, Mia Blum, co-chair, Sustainability Commission, District 3.
Executive nominations.
EA 18-0128, Darrell D'Souza, Commissioner, Baltimore Police Department, District 11.
Got 2 more.
Oh, I thought you had to say he was signed to executive appointment.
No, you just keep it.
EA 18-0129, Charlotte James, Member, Sustainability Commission, District 7. EA 18-0130, Avis Ransom, Member, Sustainability Commission, District 3.
Thank you. These all have been assigned to the Executive Appointments Committee. Bills to be introduced.
City Council Bill 18-0186, Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority. For the purpose of renewing and continuing the Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority, providing for a special effective date, and generally relating to the activities and authority of the Charles Village Community Benefits District and Management Authority. Sponsors Clark, Stokes, President Young.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. This is the 4-year reauthorization of the Charles Village Community Benefit District, which permits us to surcharge property owners within that district, and to use the proceeds from that surcharging, especially for sanitation and safety provisions in the area. Under state law, we are required to renew every 4 years, so people have a chance to evaluate, so the city of Baltimore has a chance to evaluate and to make decisions about our continuity. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been assigned to the Housing and Community Development Committee.
City Council Bill 18-0187, zoning use regulation, live entertainment, for the purpose of clarifying that in a certain circumstance, the mayor and city council may approve a conditional use for live entertainment, and providing that live entertainment in the C4 zoning district requires conditional use approval by ordinance of the mayor and city council. Sponsors Reisinger, Henry, Costello, Burnett, Scott, Pinkett, Bullock, Cohen, Stokes, Snead, Dorsey, Clark.
Chair recognizes Chairman Reisinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this legislation, Mr. President, the reason I introduced it is because live entertainment is a permitted use in the C4 commercial district, and I just strongly believe that they should come to the city council as an ordinance, because we want to look at the parking plan, the safety plan, because sometimes there might be residential districts 2 blocks away. So that's why I put the bill in, Mr. President, and I want to thank all my colleagues who sponsored the bill, co-sponsored. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been assigned to the Land Use and Transportation Committee. Oh, please add Vice President Middleton to the bill.
City Council Bill 18-0188, zoning auxiliary dwelling units, for the purpose of allowing as a conditional use requiring approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals auxiliary dwelling units in certain districts, defining certain terms, imposing certain use standards, and requiring compliance with certain additional bulk and yard regulations. Sponsors Dorsey, Henry, Burnett, Bullock, Cohen, Stokes, Snead, Reisinger.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dorsey.
Mr. Council President, colleagues, thank you. This is a bill to help bring into Baltimore something that many other cities across the country are already ushering and welcoming into neighborhoods of all sorts, tiny homes. We call them auxiliary dwelling units in this bill because this is an amendment to the zoning code to allow for them as auxiliary structures on property where other residential structures that are greater in size already exist. So in a nutshell, this is like saying you can put a carriage house in your backyard. These things have many different names throughout the country, probably as many names for them as cities that have them. Carriage house, accessory dwelling unit. It was suggested that perhaps we use the language adjunct dwelling unit. We thought that was kind of funny. We settled on auxiliary. Others refer to them as granny flats. We already have these in Baltimore City in a number of neighborhoods as what we refer to as carriage houses, and this would allow us to add affordable housing on properties in neighborhoods very often that are neighborhoods of opportunity where there are ample yard sizes to allow for a little bit extra space for somebody to live in a small place that might often be in a neighborhood that has access to a grocery store and transit lines and other things that plenty of neighborhoods in Baltimore City don't have. So this is about creating a potential affordable housing form in areas of opportunity, and adding a little extra density here and there to neighborhoods that help support businesses. So I am thankful for the co-sponsors on this bill and look forward to a good hearing on this. Thank you.
Please note Councilman Costello, Councilman Schleifer, and Council President Young as co-sponsor. This has been assigned to the Judiciary and Legislative Investigation Committee. Who? Oh, please note that Councilwoman Vice President Middleton, I know, I was messing with him. This has been assigned to the Land Use and Transportation Committee. That's a little inside joke.
City Council Bill 18-0189, short-term residential rentals, regulation and taxation, for the purpose of extending the hotel tax to certain transactions facilitated by hosting platforms, requiring licensing of short-term residential rental units, defining certain terms, providing for the denial, suspension, or revocation of short-term residential rental licenses under certain circumstances, providing for judicial and appellate review of administrative decisions relating to the licensing of short-term residential rental units, imposing certain penalties, clarifying and conforming related provisions, providing for a special effective date, and generally relating to the regulation and taxation of short-term residential rentals. Sponsors Costello, President Young, Scott, Pinkett, Dorsey, Bullock, Stokes, Reisinger.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, a similar version of this was introduced during the last council term in the fall of 2016, but did not pass. This bill does a number of things. First, it requires short-term rentals to comply with the 9.5% hotel tax, which the city is not currently collecting, so there's lost revenue that the city's not collecting on. Number two, it creates a licensing structure within the Department of Finance, which requires short-term rental hosts to get a license through the city and ensure that a number of other things that are legally required already under the law are in order. Number three, it creates a swift and decisive mechanism to revoke problem licensees. By and large, many of the short-term rental hosts, or as many folks refer to them as Airbnb operators, are good actors. There are some of them that are unfortunately bad actors and are significant nuisances in certain neighborhoods. Number four, it creates certain restrictions to prevent an increasingly overburdensome transient set of operations in residential neighborhoods. While I'm certainly appreciative for what short-term rentals provide for our city and our neighborhoods, especially in terms of marketing and selling our city to those outside of the city and encouraging folks to invest here, the last thing that we want to see, I think, on the city council is for increasingly transient operations in these residential neighborhoods where folks have made the largest, most significant investment in their personal lives, their homes, from a financial perspective, where they're raising their families and sending their children to school, where they work in their community. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank my colleagues for their support.
Thank you. This has been assigned to the Taxation, Finance, and Economic Development Committee.
City Council Bill 18-0190.
Please note that Vice President Middleton is a co-sponsor and Council Chairwoman Snead. Okay, Snead. Okay, you can go ahead.
City Council Bill 18-0190, termination of administrative parking regulations, peak hour parking restrictions on the 1500 through 1800 blocks of East 33rd Street. For the purpose of terminating peak hour parking restrictions on the 1500 through 1800 blocks of East 33rd Street. Sponsors Clark Dorsey.
This has been assigned, you want to talk about it? This has been assigned to the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
City Council Bill 18-0191, termination of administrative parking regulations, peak hour parking restrictions on the 2500 through 3600 and 4100 through 5200 blocks of Harford Road for the purpose of terminating peak hour parking restrictions on the 2500 through 3600 and 4100 through 5200 blocks of Harford Road. Sponsors Clark Dorsey.
This has been assigned to the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
City Council Bill 18-0192, termination of administrative parking regulations. Peak hour parking restrictions on the 2800 block of Echodale Avenue through the 4100 through 4900 blocks of Hillen Road and the 5000 through 5300 blocks of Perry Parkway for the purpose of terminating peak hour parking restrictions on the 2800 block of Echodale Avenue, the 4100 through 4900 blocks of Hillen Road, and the 5000 through 5300 blocks of Perry Parkway. Sponsors Dorsey.
This has been assigned to the Land Use and Transportation Committee. Resolutions introduced.
City Council Resolution 18-0065R, request for state action, automatic voter registration. For the purpose of declaring the City Council support for HB 152 and the Safe and Accessible Registration Act and calling the Baltimore delegation and all state legislators to action during the Maryland General Assembly and voting for HB 152 to ensure all residents have safe, secure, and easily accessible voter registration. Sponsors Cohen, President Young, Henry, Costello, Scott, Burnett, Pingett, Bullock, Stokes, Snead, Dorsey, Clark, Reisinger.
Please note that Vice President Middleton as a co-sponsor. Chair recognizes Chairman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. President. HB 152, the Safe and Accessible Registration Act, also known as automatic voter registration, is an effort to expand the franchise and incorporate more people into our democracy. To be very clear, this only applies for citizens and people who are eligible to vote, but it means quite literally that you are automatically registered, which in Maryland is a forward-thinking, progressive, good thing. We've seen around the country many states act to restrict access to the polls, particularly in low-income and largely minority communities. Yet here in Maryland, we are pushing ahead, leading the nation, and introducing legislation that will, according to what we've seen in other states, increase voter turnout. Really important to note, this is safe. It will not allow people who are ineligible to vote, but I appreciate all the co-sponsors on this legislation, and I encourage everyone to go out and vote. I therefore ask for to suspend the rules for immediate adoption.
Second by Councilman Scott. All those in favor to suspend the rules for immediate adoption of this resolution say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. The rules are suspended. Chair recognizes Chairman Cohen.
I move the resolution.
Second by Councilman Scott. All those in favor of adopting resolution 18-0065R say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. This resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
City Council Resolution 18-0066R, request for state action, support a $15 minimum wage for Maryland, for the purpose of calling on the Maryland General Assembly to enact and the governor to sign SB 543, HB 664, or similar legislation establishing a statewide $15 minimum wage to ensure that all working Marylanders can pay for their basic needs. Sponsors Clark, Burnett, President Young, Henry, Costello, Scott, Pinkett, Bullock, Cohen, Snead, Dorsey, Stokes, and Reisinger.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the council. I, in a moment, would like to defer to the councilman from the 8th District, who is also the lead sponsor on this legislation, or on this resolution. Basically, our moment has come in the State General Assembly. It's an election year, and it's a year in which, more than ever, there is justification for a statewide $15 minimum wage. The legislation has been introduced at the end of January. It is sponsored by Senator Madaleno of Montgomery County and Delegate Shelley Heddleman of Baltimore County. We are, in the City Council, are supporting this resolution for statewide $15 by 2023. And I ask all of our colleagues to please support this resolution so that we can be at our strongest to fight for 15 for the entire state of Maryland. We're pleased and proud that the mayor joined us today in announcing her own support, and that the president of the city council joined us, as well as he so often and regularly does. And we hope that we're all planning to go to Annapolis and maybe stay there till we get what we need for our people. If I may, Mr. President, I'd like...
Councilwoman Clark, would you announce the date and the time?
That is
so
June...
council people can clear their schedules.
I will. February 20th, that's right. Don't ever ask me for a date. Oh. Well, my husband wouldn't like that either, but I meant don't ever ask me what a date is. It is February 20th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the General Assembly in Annapolis. We are all going to be there and fight for 15 because it makes sense. Montgomery County's already doing it. Prince George's, D.C. Come on, everybody. We have needs, and our working families do too, and we thank them for their patience, and I thank my colleague as he rises to say a few words as well.
Chair recognizes,
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Bullock. I'm the only one who recognizes people.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
President.
Burnett.
Thank you, Councilwoman Clark. And thank you to all my colleagues who are supporting this resolution, to the President and Mayor Pugh. This is a very important bill when we're talking about moving the state forward, helping Baltimore families make ends meet, many of which struggle to keep food on the table, keep the lights on, keep the water running. This is a very important bill that we have to get passed. It has to get done. I wish it was something that we were already rolling on, but by 2023, families families will be making a livable wage. And as I mentioned earlier, it also has a cost of living increase. As housing goes up, as transportation costs goes up, as rent goes up, so should wages. And so I'm calling on the General Assembly to pass this important legislation and Governor Hogan to sign it so that working families can make a livable wage and support their family both in Baltimore City and across the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you.
City Council Resolution 18-0067R, request for state action, create a, what? What'd I do?
Oh, no, I got to recognize, I'm sorry.
Move to suspend the rules. To
Second
permit.
by Councilman Burnett. All those in favor of suspending the rules for immediate adoption of this resolution say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. The rules are suspended. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Clark.
Why not Burnett? He can move them. Okay, move. Adoption.
Second by Councilman Burnett. All those in favor of adopting resolution 18-0066R say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. This resolution is adopted. And I want council members to please, so we can go as a unified force. It's going to be at 1 p.m. and all of us can car share and get down to Annapolis to let our legislators know that we're serious about a state-mandated $15 minimum wage. And we're only talking about 5 years. It won't get to 15 for 5 years, which is a shame, but let's try to make sure that we all get there and let them hear our voice.
City Council Resolution 18-0067R, request for state action, create a board of police commissioners and transfer full control over the Baltimore City Police Department to the City of Baltimore, for the purpose of calling on the Maryland General Assembly to enact and the governor to sign legislation to remove the Baltimore City Police Department's status as an instrumentality of the state of Maryland and place the department completely under the control of the citizens of Baltimore, acting through the mayor, city council, and a new board of police commissioners. Sponsor Scott, President Young, Henry Costello, Burnett, Pinkett, Dorsey, Bullock, Cohen, Stokes, Sneed, Middleton, Slifer.
Please note that Chairman Singer is a co-sponsor. Chair recognizes Chairman Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members of the council, I'm going to start tonight by reading the first line involving the police department in section 16-2 of the Baltimore City Public Local Laws. The Police Department of Baltimore City is hereby constituted as an agency and instrumentality of the state of Maryland. That has been the truth for the Baltimore Police Department since it was created in the 1800s. But today, we all know in this body that the oversight structure of BPD is broken. Anyone who can't see that, in light of what we've gone through as a city in recent weeks, in recent years, and for the 33 years that I've been alive, is tone deaf to the issues of our city. No other jurisdiction in Maryland has to go to Annapolis to pass laws on their police department. No other major city council does not have legislative authority over its police department. Baltimore should be no different. Nobody else has to do that. We are held accountable for the actions of everything that happens in the police department with no power. We'll take the responsibility. We want the responsibility. We're just asking the General Assembly and the governor to give us the power. If we're going to have to take the responsibility, we should be able to act as every other council in the state of Maryland and every other council across this United States of America acts on their police department. So with that, I would just like to make a motion to suspend the rules to approve this resolution for immediate adoption.
Second by Councilman Dorsey. All those in favor of suspend the rules for immediate adoption of this resolution say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. The rules are suspended. Chair recognizes Chairman Scott.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the resolution.
Second by Councilman Dorsey. All those in favor of adopting resolution 18-0067R say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. This resolution is adopted. You can find the consent calendar in section A at the back of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Motion by Chairman Sneed, second by Councilwoman Clark. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carried. This calendar is approved. Housing and Urban Affairs Committee.
City Council Bill 17-0168, Special Benefits Districts Be More Safe Places, for the purpose of redesignating the city's Public Safety Conservation Area Program as the Neighbor Watch Area Program, setting the requirements for neighborhoods to participate in the Neighbor Watch Area Program, creating Be More Safe Places Board to implement the Neighbor Watch Area Program, requiring the Department of Transportation to post signs in designated Neighbor Watch areas, and generally relating to the Neighbor Watch Area Program.
Chair recognizes Chairman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met on January 23rd, 2018 to consider this bill. There are no amendments, and I move the bill favorable.
Second by Councilman Henry. All those in favor of approving this bill say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill moves to third reader. Judiciary and Legislative Investigation Committee.
City Council Bill 17-0156, City Property, naming the southwestern plateau of Wyman Park Dell's main park area to be the Harriet Tubman Grove at Wyman Park Dell, for the purpose of naming the southwestern plateau of Wyman Park Dell's main park area, bounded roughly by the wooded steep slope to the east, the 29th Street Spur Road and Park entrance to the south, the southernmost entrance stairs off of the Art Museum Drive to the north, and Howard Street Art Museum Drive to the west, to be the Harriet Tubman Grove at Wyman Park Dell.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held a hearing on this bill on January 16th. There are amendments on my colleague's desk. At this time, I move those amendments.
Second by Councilwoman Clark. All those in favor of approving these amendments say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill is amended. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill favorably as amended.
Second by Councilwoman Clark. All those in favor of approving this bill say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill moves to third reader.
City Council Bill 17-0165, City Property, renaming Madison Park to Nathan C. Irby Jr. Park, for the purpose of changing the name of Madison Park located at 1400 East Eager Street to Nathan C. Irby Jr. Park.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held a hearing on this bill on January 16th. At this time, I move the bill favorably.
Second by Chairman Stokes. All those in favor of approving this bill say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill moves to third reader.
City Council Bill 18-0176, alley gating and greening standards, for the purpose of clarifying a requirement that to gate or green an alley, the majority of structures abutting the alley must be residential, and generally relating to the standards for the gating and greening of alleys.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held a hearing on this bill on January 23rd, as we did the previous two, my mistake. At this time, I'd like to move the bill favorably.
Second by Chairman Bullock. All those in favor of approving this bill say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill moves to third reader.
City Council Bill 18-0178, indoor smoking hookah lounges, for the purpose of exempting hookah lounges from the city's indoor smoking restrictions, subject to certain conditions, repealing two obsolete exceptions that have been preempted by more stringent state law, and as such are invalid, and generally relating to operation of hookah lounges.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held a hearing on this bill on January 30th. There is an amendment on my colleague's desk from the Law Department. At this time, I'd like to move the amendment.
Second by Chairman Stokes. All those in favor of approving these amendments say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. This bill is amended. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to move the bill favorably as amended.
Second by Chairman Stokes. All those in favor of approving this bill say aye.
Aye. Those
opposed, nay. Please note that Councilman Zeke Cohen, Councilwoman Clark, Councilman Pinkett, and Councilman Burnett as no votes. This bill moves to third reader.
City Council Bill 18-0061R, investigative hearing, increase infant mortality rate, for the purpose of calling on the Health Commissioner to appear before the City Council to discuss the troubling recent increase in Baltimore's infant mortality rate and what steps can be taken to continue reducing infant mortality rate in Baltimore City.
Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held a hearing on this resolution on January 30th. At this time, I'd like to move the resolution favorably.
Second by Chairman Stokes. All those in favor of approving this resolution, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion to approve this resolution is adopted. Taxation, Finance, and Economic Development Committee.
City Council Resolution 17-0035R, investigative hearing, Employees Retirement System Funding Ratio, for the purpose of calling on representatives from the Baltimore City Employees Retirement System to appear before the City Council to discuss the system's current low funding ratio and its plans to ensure the city will be able to meet all of its retirement obligations to its employees without placing an unreasonable burden on the city taxpayers.
Chair recognizes Chairwoman Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill was heard on January 25th, 2018. Very informative hearing. We did ask for some technical reports, but the bill was approved favorable, so I'm asking it to be moved favorable.
Second by Councilman Pinkett. All those in favor of approving this resolution say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion to approve this resolution is adopted. Committee announcement. Chair recognizes Chairwoman Sneed. She jumped up real quick.
Thank you. The Labor Committee will hold a hearing on Monday, February the 12th, 2018 at 5 p.m. in the council chambers for Council Bill 17-0170, city officials residency requirements.
Okay. Chair recognizes Chairman Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Executive Appointments Committee will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, February 21st, beginning at 10 a.m. for Sustainability Commission for Charlotte James and Avis Ransom. Also, the Executive Appointments will hold a televised hearing on Wednesday, February the 21st, 2018, beginning at 5 p.m. to review the Darrell De Sosa as the Commissioner of Baltimore City Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Tuesday, February 27th at 2 p.m., the Housing and Urban Affairs Committee will be holding a hearing on City Council Bill 18-0179, Ordinance Residential Lease Requirements and Required Disclosures. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee will be holding a working session on Bill 17-0152, Food Service Facilities, Healthy Beverages for Children Meals, at the request of Councilman Scott. We have already held a in-depth hearing on this, and we'll continue working on this. That will be on Tuesday, February 13th at 10 a.m. The Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee will be holding a hearing on Bill 17-0005, Charter Amendment Term Limits, at the request of Councilman Schleifer, on Tuesday, February 13th at 10:10 a.m. Mr. President, I'd like to suspend the rules to announce a hearing.
Second by Councilman Stokes. All those in favor of suspending the rules and announcing a hearing, say aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. You may proceed. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee will be holding a hearing on Bill number 18-0185, non-owner occupied dwelling units, rooming houses, and vacant structures, rental dwellings, registration and licensing at the request of Councilman Henry, on Tuesday, February 20th at 10 a.m.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rosinger. Before you start, Chairman, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that the meeting on the 20th is a very, I mean, I'm trying to rush nobody, but we want to go to Annapolis at 1 p.m. Chair recognizes Councilman Henry.
My experience, Mr. President, with hearings of this nature in Annapolis is that there will be ample opportunity for the council to participate.
Okay, but I don't want us to miss it.
Do you want? Okay. He'll announce. He's going to move it up a little bit.
Okay.
Mr. President, I'd like to re-announce that hearing for 9 a.m.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hold up. We got some. Hold up for 1 minute. Technical difficulties. We're going to pause for station identification. We have it straight. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to stick with the 10 a.m. Slot, and we will have a full hearing, and if we're not able to get done with it, we'll reconvene for later in the week. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Reisinger. Working together works.
That was Councilman Melvin Stooks. Mr. President, members of the council, the Land Use and Transportation Committee will hold a hearing of Bill 17-0114 on February 28th at 12:30 p.m. in the council chambers. This is it's a conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to a two-dwelling unit in the R8 zoning district with variances located at 2938 Huntington Avenue, sponsored by Councilman Stokes. The committee will also hold a hearing on Bill 17-0143 on March 7th at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. This is a repeal of the ordinance 14-314 Remington Road Plan Unit Development, sponsored by Councilman Stokes. Committee will hold a hearing on Bill 17-0079 on March the 14th at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. This is a rezoning located at 2300 Edmonton Avenue, sponsored by Councilman Bullock. The committee will have a hearing on Bill 17-0118 on March 14th at 1:05 p.m. in the council chambers. This is zoning conditional use retail goods establishment with alcoholic beverages located at 2300 Edmonton Avenue, sponsored by Councilman Bullock. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Taxation, Finance, Economic Development Committee will hear 5 bills on Thursday, February 22nd. The first one is Bill number 170092, Morgan State University approving application for designation as a RISE zone, granting enhanced local property tax credit and it will be heard here in council chambers at 10 a.m. The second is Bill number 170159. It will also be heard on Thursday, February 22nd at 10:10 a.m. here in council chambers, sale of property 1001 North Smallwood Street. Also on Thursday, February 22nd at 10:15 a.m., Bill number 170160, sale of property 2120 West Lafayette Avenue. Also on Thursday, February 22nd at 10:20 a.m., Bill 170161, sale of property 2201 Mosier Street. And lastly, on Thursday, February 22nd at 10:25 a.m., here in council chambers, sale of property block 6254D, lot 021. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Dorsey. Councilman Dorsey wants to say
Thank
something.
you, Mr. Council President. The hearing for 170092, the RISE zone tax credit for Morgan, appears to be putting the cart before the horse. This is the hearing on a tax subsidy for a project that by law cannot go forward until the planned unit development for the site is repealed and replaced. And I have made it very clear to the developer that they need to submit a new planned unit development proposal for that site, and that we're ready to hear and receive that proposal at any time. It has been a number of months and the developer has not presented that proposal. And so I would ask that this hearing could be postponed so that the communities can have an opportunity to support this tax incentive for the project as it might actually exist.
Thank you, Councilman, but these are bills that I was accused of holding by you. So we're going to have this hearing. Chair recognizes Councilman Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members of the council, the Public Safety Committee will have a legislative oversight hearing on February 13th at 1 p.m. Here in the council chambers, the committee will conduct a legislative oversight hearing on the Baltimore City Police Academy's training and graduation standards at the request of the president. Mr. President, I make a move for suspension of rules 10-2, 10-3 to announce the hearing.
Second by Council Chairman Costello. All those in favor, suspend the rules, announce the hearing, say aye. All opposed, nay. The motion carried. You can go ahead, Chairman.
Mr. President, on February the 20th at 9 a.m., the Public Safety Committee will have a hearing for Council Bill 18-0180, police ordinance prohibiting the purchase of prostitution for the purpose of prohibiting the purchase of prostitution in Baltimore City, defining certain terms, establishing certain penalties, setting a special effective date, and generally relating to the purpose of prostitution, introduced by Councilman Burnett on January the 22nd. And lastly, Mr. President, members of the Council, the Public Safety Committee will hold a hearing for City Council Resolution 18-0060R on February the 28th. This is a TV hearing here in the Dubanks Chambers at 5 p.m. Resolutions, multi-year coordinated comprehensive multi-agency violence reduction strategy, introduced by myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more committee announcements? Regular announcements. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Clark. Oh, you're already standing. Chair recognizes Chairman Scott.
Thank you, sir.
He's already standing. And you're next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just solemnly ask that Council Vice President Middleton honor a moment of silence for the 27 homicide victims in 2018. Thank you.
Can you include the opioids so I won't have to do it?
Yes, sir, and for everyone that we've lost in the opioid crisis in Baltimore.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Clark.
In that same spirit, Mr. President, members of the council, I just want to stand here this evening and discuss for a moment the passing of Franco Heinz. He was a dear friend of mine, a great servant of the House of Delegates and his 43rd district, as well as he served in this council for a period of months, replacing an elected member who had moved to California, Robert Fitzpatrick by name. Frank Heinz, maybe you won't think this is to his credit, but he managed my first campaign for city council. It speaks to his fortitude and vision. And it was actually more than just mine. It was Burns Clark Irby, because we ran as a ticket, and he got us all elected. And actually, I misquoted myself in the paper, but what happened was he was so determined to get all three of us elected that when the third of us finally pulled through, I won't say who that was, it was the first time I ever saw him smoke, and last. He got out a cigar and lit it and sat back in his chair after many months of a lot of effort. As a public servant, he was very early progressive. He was a bike rider before there were such things as bike lanes in Baltimore or Maryland, because he believed that in complete streets, even though we weren't calling it that at the time. He was honest, he was fair. He was a very good state legislator, and as I said, he sat in this chamber for several months to fill out a term of office, and I know he served us well there. He went on to become head of the Public Service Commission, and an honest one he was, and progressive. A lot of things that work right today in the BGE world are because of his leadership then. And then he went on to be the president of, I guess, Baltimore Gas and Electric. He was a progressive. He worked with us for integrated tickets, evenly integrated tickets to the city council as well as to the House of Delegates. Before that was when those kinds of efforts were pioneering. And he lives in Charlottesville now with his wife, June. He died on the 24th of January after a short but hard illness. And I know that our vice president is going to have us remember him in a moment of silence. He was a wonderful, diverse, and loving man. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Clark. Chair recognizes Councilman Costello. Before you start, I'd like to wish Councilman Burnett a happy early birthday. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. State representatives from Legislative District 46, Senator Ferguson, Delegates Clippinger, Delegate Brooke Learman, and Delegate Robin Lewis will be hosting their annual legislative town hall on February 24th, Saturday at 10:30 a.m. at the National Federation for the Blind in Riverside. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Tomorrow afternoon in Annapolis, I'll be heading down to support tax incentive, $2,500 property tax credit for the lowest paid 25% of municipal employees. It's the same exact tax credit that we offer to police officers, firefighters, sheriff's deputies, and which the city is presently supporting for expansion to include school police. And, you know, in cases, police officers are often making, I think more than half of them are making $80,000 a year. And this is a tax credit that would be identical to what we offer them. Some of them who are making much more than that, 100,000, 6 figures plus. It would extend the exact same tax credit to the lowest paid people in the city's employment, people who are making as little as less than $25,000 while working full-time for Baltimore City. So I think it's important to support this bill that was put in by Senator Ferguson and heard in the Senate side last week, and was put in cross-filed by Delegate Ali, and is being heard in the House tomorrow, and I'm really thankful to have their support, and that the council pass a resolution to support tax subsidies for city employees of this nature. So I'm going down tomorrow. That hearing's at 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Costello.
Thank you again, Mr. President. On Wednesday, February 6th, Mayor Catherine Pugh will be hosting Baltimore Night in Annapolis, starting at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes, you got an announcement? Okay.
You had just brought something to my attention when you talked about the moment of silence for the opioid epidemic, and just wanted to bring everyone up to speed as the board member of the Maryland Association of Counties. We've had several conversations. Remember, there's representatives from every county, and I represent Baltimore City, and we have had several conversations about joining the lawsuit for, you know, with the opioid epidemic that's going on, and several counties have already started, and I'm happy to report that the mayor has approved that Baltimore City joins in this lawsuit. There are many big pharmaceutical companies that did not properly monitor prescription painkillers, and that has been flooding our community. So I'm just so happy to report that we are part of not just the state and county lawsuit, but the national lawsuit.
Yeah, so I can tell Thaddeus, the resolution that I called about last week, you don't even have to worry about it because we already joined in the lawsuit. I had a resolution that didn't go anywhere. Chair recognizes Vice President Middleton.
Thank you. The next meeting of the City Council will be held on Monday, February 26, 2018, and we're going to have a moment of silence for Frank O. Hines. Also, the families and victims of the opioid crisis, and the 27 victims of homicides for 2018.
Thank you. There have been no further business. This concludes the 27th meeting of the 72nd term of the Baltimore City Council. Good night.